Dear colleagues of the Weekly Dartscast, there's only one man whose name can and should be on this very trophy. And that, of course, is my main man, Ko Stompe. It's not Ko Stompy, it's Ko Stompe.
As long as you know it,
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Weekly Dartscast in association with Darts Corner. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me this week, my regular co-host Burton DeWitt, still away on his holidays, but I'm delighted to have with us this week another special guest co-host. He is a perennial top 4 player on the Darts Strava rankings, the Darts Connect superfan, and a Weekly Dartscast original. It is the long-time contributor and friend of the show, Matthew Kiernan, aka the Darting Nerd. How was that for an intro, and how are you doing?
God, I'm blushing, Alex. No, that's lovely. No, always big shoes to fill when Burton's away, but always great to speak to you. And yeah, it's amazing. This is the 7th year you've been doing this, so absolutely wonderful. So and so much to talk about in the darts world, isn't there?
There certainly is. Great to get you on as a guest co-host. We were just chatting off air. It's been a little while since we had you on chatting. So yeah, good to have you on. And as you say, lots to discuss. We're going to be getting into our preview of the World Cup of Darts, which starts on Thursday night. But before we do that, let's first have a look back on what we've already seen, starting with the Euro Tour from the weekend. It was the European Darts Open in Leverkusen. It was a 7th career Euro Tour title for Dave Chisnall, beating Ross Smith in Sunday night's final. And forget the TV title talk. We've talked a lot about that with Dave Chisnall looking for that first TV title. But what I want to know is, do you think Chizzy will be back in the Premier League next year? What do you reckon?
Well, it's very difficult to disassociate the TV title talk from this conversation, isn't it? Because ultimately, if Chisnall does win that elusive first TV title, he will be straight in there. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened for him yet. I thought it was going to happen for him last year because he picked up those 3 titles on the Euro Tour and he was absolutely flying, and it just didn't quite happen for him in the second half of the year. You know, this could be the start of a good run of form for him. He won it in really determined fashion, I thought. You only have to realise that, I mean, I'm sure Ryan Searle, Kevin Dutz and Luke Woodhouse will all be kicking themselves really, because they all were in very, very strong positions to beat him in this competition, and they didn't take their chances, and Chisnall was able to grind out those performances and then performed very well in the final under very difficult circumstances, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second, to get over the line against Ross Smith. So it's a really well-deserved title. Is it enough to put him into that Premier League talk? I mean, it's very early in the year to be discussing all this, but he is going to be just one of many, many names that are going to be vying for those positions, and part of the ever-growing debate that always rumbles on around Premier League selections. But how did his performance grab you, Alex?
Yeah, I've got to say I was pretty impressed with Dave Chisnall, particularly in the back end of that final. Actually, I managed to catch most of Sunday afternoon session and then the back end of Sunday evening. But yeah, we got to the end of that game. Dave Chisnall 6-3 up. He got pegged back to 6-all. Ross Smith, he fires in a 180 to leave 32. And to borrow Rod Studd's favourite word, the momentum was with Ross Smith at that point. But it didn't last very long, did it? Because Chizzy takes out the 1-3-2 on the ball. And then against the throw, that ton out in 2 darts to get the job done. It was 2 classy finishes from a classy player. And yeah, he could well find himself back playing in front of those Premier League crowds in the not so distant future, because we've seen him do it in the past. He had that 4-year stretch from 2014 to 2017 where he was included every year. The first 2 of those years, it was off the back of an appearance in a major final. The 3rd year most likely was his run to the playoffs of the Premier League the year before, nearly finishing top of the table, coming very close to making the final as well. And then the last of those 4 years, he'd had 2 major finals in 2016. So after that, we've not seen Dave Chisnall in the Premier League. He's had 2 more major finals, one in the Grand Prix, one in the Masters, that one in the Masters 2022, an unofficial buy-in for the Premier League, if you like. Joe Cullen beating Chizzy in that final. That got him the Masters title. That got him in the Premier League that year. So even if Dave Chisnall does get back to a major final, not even win one, it's not a guarantee these days, is it, that you're going to be invited, especially now that we are an 8-player Premier League. Back then when Chizzy was involved, it was 10 players. So it is more difficult to get in there now. But it's a long way to go, as you say, and the title at the weekend, I think it's worth mentioning, is put Chizzy up to number 4 on the post Ali Pali order of merit. So yeah, there's a long way to go, a lot of darts to be played, but right now that is a guaranteed route back in the Premier League. As we know, you get in that top 4 after the World Championship, you get invited to the Premier League. But beyond that, I think Chizzy knows that if he can end that long wait for a major, that first one, then that is most likely going to get him in, because we know the class that he's got, and if he can break that duck, I think he would be a popular major winner, and he's an entertaining player to watch. He can throw the big finishes, he can throw the 180s, and if he can get himself high up in the rankings, end that wait for a first major, then yeah, I think we could be seeing him back in that Premier League.
I think he's a very nice person as well, and I think all of the darts community would not begrudge seeing Dave Chisnall obviously winning that TV title. I know we keep going on about it, but it is long overdue, isn't it? And of course, seeing him then hitting the heights, hopefully being in the Premier League once again next year, I don't think anyone would really have anything bad or untoward to say about that. I just want to talk about the final just briefly, and then we'll come on to Ross Smith. The crowd had a big part to play in it, and I don't want to sound like a moaning Myrtle, but it was obviously a very slow start to the final, a very long day for both Chisnall and Smith. Chisnall went through the gears, got to 6-3, and it was seemingly on cruise control at that point. And then suddenly, and I'm going to whisper this, I don't like football very much, Alex, but suddenly Germany scored a goal, and the whole crowd went loopy at this, and it became very, very clear that half the crowd were not paying any attention to the darts at all. And this seemed to be a pivotal moment where Chisnall had to stop, regroup, and he just totally lost his rhythm. And this and it seemed to galvanise Smith. Now, of course, you're both playing under the same circumstances, of course, and this affected Chisnall when he was throwing, and it was him that had to regroup. But he totally lost his momentum, and Smith came back, and that's when he dragged it back to 6-all, and it very nearly cost Chisnall. And there were lots of problems with the crowd during the day, during the evening session in particular. Damon Heta had issues, Michael Smith had issues. They were giving it back. Fair play to them. It just left a bit of a sour taste, I feel. You've bought tickets. I know you can basically just do what you like, because obviously it's it's your money, but give the players the respect that they deserve. So anyway, but as I say, there were 2 players in the final, and the other was, of course, Ross Smith, who's reached his second Euro Tour final of the year. Of course, he is 0 for 2, runners up on both occasions, and he says he needs to work on a few things to get over the line. But what do you think is missing at the moment for Ross?
Yeah, it's a good question, and as always with Ross Smith, he was gracious in defeat, as you would expect from him, but you could still tell that it was a title that he probably felt he'd let slip away there. And okay, as we've said, he was 6-3 down, got it back to 6-all, and then there were those 2 big finishes from Chizzy that got him over the line there. But for Ross to have that reaction, and this is from a player who he's won bigger titles in the past, he's won the European Championship, but he's yet to win a European Tour title. It's a weird quirk, really, and he's not the only former major winner without a Euro Tour on their resume. You look at Nathan Aspinall, Dimitri van den Berg, Stephen Bunting, Chris Dobie, some of the other names who've tasted that major success on TV, but in terms of prize money and stature, the rung below the ladder, the Euro Tour, they've not got the hands on one of those yet. But what he's missing at the moment for Ross Smith, what does he need to work on to get over that finishing line on the Euro Tour? As I say, I caught most of Sunday's action in the afternoon, and that game with Josh Rock, what a game that was, by the way, and what a session of darts just in general. We haven't got time to delve in through the whole weekend, but I have to mention that Damon Heta Chris Dobie game, Heta having 4 ton-plus averages, including 3 1-2-4s, Dobie at a 170, and Stephen Bunting kicking off that session with a 117 average. There was a lot of quality darts on show. But back to Ross Smith, he averaged 106 in that third round, by the way, and he came in clutch at the last moments of that game with Josh Rock, the 70 finish, 1 dart at a double, Poles on the pressure in the decider with that 159, Josh missing the 2 match darts, Ross Smith finding that double 12 with his last dart, and after that he survived some match starts in the quarterfinals as well against Jan van Veen, but again he was there ready to pounce. The semi-finals against Michael Smith, I thought he held himself together well. He had that lead, and then Michael Smith, that is, coming back at him to 6-5, but Ross Smith finding that double 10 with his last start. And leading into the final, we did see his average, as you say, they're long days, those Sundays on the Euro Tour, but his averages were dropping with each game. Okay, it's incredibly hard to maintain that 106 all day, but he went from a 106 to a 97 to a 92, but his doubles remained pretty steady, 43%, 60%, 43% those 3 games on the Sunday leading into the final. But in the final, a 93 average, 31% on the doubles, and the doubles, they are what can save you when you're not hitting the big scores as often. But there were a few occasions in the final when he missed doubles and at crucial times, and it could have swung the final. One was to break for 4-3, the other one, the 90 finish, he was 7-6 down, he hits the treble 20 first dart, goes inside on the double 15, doesn't get that second dart to force the decider, and Chizzy, as we know, comes back, takes out the 100, wins it 8-6. And I think the timing, that comes into it as well. Ross Smith, he had that 1-4-4 finish during the final, but Chizzy in that particular leg was nowhere to be seen. Then he hits that 180 to leave a double. Chizzy takes out the 132, and 2 instances there where you've seen some big finishes, and it shows just how important the timing can be, because they're big checkouts. Ross Smith's had the bigger one, but in the context of the game, it's Chizzy's one that we're going to look back on and say that was a key moment. So getting that timing right, which can be a difficult thing to do, but finding a way to keep that standard up into the final game of a Euro Tour, I think that is going to be the key for Ross to go one better next time.
Just to expand on all very good points, just to expand on those points, I think that what you've got to remember is he was desperately unlucky not to be picked for the Premier League, wasn't he, a couple of years ago when he was European champion. I thought it was very hard done by that particular year. He's going to be another player in that conversation that rumbles on throughout the year and obviously comes to a head at the culmination of the World Championship. I think for him, what's really impressive, in addition to the finishing, of course, those pinhead 180s, they're incredible. They're absolutely amazing. And so the power scoring from that aspect is really, really impressive. And I think Ross Smith just has a way of just going under the radar and just quietly, unassumingly going about his business, but playing in a very entertaining way, if that makes sense. I know there's a bit of an oxymoron, but I think you sort of know what I'm getting at. I think for him, he would need to work on the sort of the killer instinct in the final. It's a very long day. He looked fairly defeated quite early on and fairly frustrated. It was a very slow start to that final from both players. He was cutting a very dejected figure quite early on, visibly showing frustration, which is never a good thing, is it? Because as soon as I don't know when what it's like when you're playing, Alex, but if you see your opponent struggling and showing signs of frustration, it's just fuel, and especially it just inspires you to play and really play even better and potentially stamp your authority on the contest, especially at that level where the margins are so tight. And as you say, that Josh Rock game was just absolutely unbelievable from both players. It'll be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Yeah, I think the only times my opponents show any frustration is they're thinking, how have I not won this game already? Why is it still going on? But let's bring in our first guest on this week's show. We are looking ahead to the World Cup a little bit later on, but let's hear from a player who is going to be in Frankfurt this week. What a debut he had in the World Cup last year, getting to the quarterfinals representing Sweden. Here's our chat with Oskar Lukasiak. I'm pleased to say we're joined by one half of Team Sweden at this year's World Cup of Darts, Oskar Lukasiak. Thanks for the time, Oskar. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yep, it's fine here. Thank you. How are you?
Doing well, and when we're talking, it's just over a week before you make the trip back to Frankfurt to play in the World Cup for a second time. You had a great debut last year, making the quarterfinals with Dennis Nilsson. What are the expectations like this time round, and with a new partner as well in Jeffrey de Graaf, who is on the tour at the moment?
Yeah, my expectations is I'm hoping to do the same at least. I just saw the draw for like 5 minutes ago, so it's possible to go through the group and I'll see what's happened after that.
Well, we'll come back to the World Cup last year, but lots to chat to you about. Let's go right back to where it all started for you in darts. I read you started playing at the age of 9, so how did you get introduced to darts?
It is is because my parents had a dart club here in Sweden, and they needed another person in the team. So that's how I started. Like hour before the league game when I was 9.
And so you got thrown in at the deep end there, playing for a team. Do you remember much about that debut?
I have only seen the results afterwards, and I know that I lost my single game with 2-3 in legs, so it was a close one, but...
Well, just 3 years later, you were making history, throwing a 9-darter at the Denmark Open. This was back in 2004. How quickly did your level improve from when you first started to then being able to produce darts like that in a tournament at such a short period of time? Was it a natural talent, or were you putting in lots of hours on the practice board back then?
I did a lot of hours at the dart club because I was there almost all the time, and we had one person over there that gave me like £1 for every leg I won against him. So that's did some inspiration for me, and then just playing a lot against older people and a lot of practice.
And on that 9-darter, you were the youngest player at the age of just 12 to throw a 9-darter in a competition. This year it's 20 years on from that perfect leg. How often do you still get asked about it these days, and just what was it like to be the person to do that?
I still get the questions all the time of it, but to be honest, I don't remember so much from back then. I was just a little kid, and I was so focused on the game. So,
20 years on, are you still the youngest, or have you heard of anyone younger than that throwing a 9-darter in a tournament?
I know that I'm the youngest official in our official game. And I don't know if someone else have done it in a pub or something, but it's an official tournament. I'm the youngest. So.
Well, fast forward a few months and you're playing in the World Masters. Am I right in saying that you got an exemption to play in the boys singles, as I think you were only 12 at the time? The minimum age was 13 to play in the World Masters.
Yeah, that's true. And that was because they moved the tournament like 1 week earlier. If it should be like the normal week they had, then I was 13, so it was just a few days before my 13th birthday. The win in Denmark was also a good thing about it.
Definitely, and you went on to win that title as well, becoming the first Swedish player to win the World Masters. More titles would follow. The Latvian Open men's title at the age of 15. At 16, you were representing Sweden in events like the Nordic Cup. What are your memories of that time and having all that success as well?
I knew that I could play a good darts, but my aim was so high back then that I wanted really to play with the best people in the world, and just aiming for that all the time. So I had a lot of practice to get there, and a lot of tournaments to play, and
And for you, what does it mean to put on that Sweden shirt and play for your country? Because it's something that you've been doing a lot of over the years, from those early years, WDF, Europe Cups, World Cups, now the PDC World Cup as well. How special is it to represent your country in darts?
It's almost always special to play with us. You have your country in the back, and you feel like you have all the people backing you up. So it's definitely something special to play in the national team.
Well, let's get back to your individual career. And as a youngster, we just spoke about it. You had a lot of success. You were being tipped as someone who would go to the very top. Was it difficult to handle that pressure? What were the main challenges you found when trying to make that next step from a promising youngster to then trying to get onto that professional scene?
It was really difficult because suddenly I turned 18 and quit the school, and then I needed to make my own money to get to the tournaments. I started to work a lot, so I didn't have so much time at the dartboard anymore. So that's why I didn't show up for a few years, I think.
And we look at the dart scene now, obviously it's a lot different. There's a lot more opportunities for youngsters. We think of the development tour. That's been a big breeding ground of top young talent. Do you think if that would have been around back then that you would have made that jump a bit more quicker?
I think so. I think it will be a little bit easier to get the jump up, because to play against the good people, the great people all around the world all the time is something special.
And I was reading somewhere earlier they had your nickname down as the Wonder Boy. Is that true?
Yeah, that was my early nickname, but I don't use it right now. So.
Are you just running with no nickname at the moment?
Yeah, no nickname for me right now, so we'll see. Maybe someday I will have one.
Fair enough. Well, fast forward to 2017, we see you go to Q School, then we often see you on the Nordic and Baltic Tour up until 2020 when the pandemic hits. Did you take a break from darts then, or were you a player that took up online darts and played a lot at home during the lockdowns?
Actually, I quit darts at the pandemic. It was too much right before that, so just before that I told my team manager for Sweden that I didn't want to play for the Swedish team anymore. So I was just tired of darts. I took like 1.5 years break from it. And when the pandemic was almost over, I started to play again.
What was the inspiration behind getting the darts back out of the case and playing again?
Actually, it was just some friends that wanted me to play some league games and some local tournaments. And I said, we can try it. We'll see what happens. So I didn't practice anything. I just played and still, make it to like semi-finals and some darts like that.
You picked up your level pretty soon after having that break?
Yeah, it felt like that.
Well, after that disrupted few years with the pandemic, you said there you took a break from darts. A lot of darts came back in 2022. We saw you back playing on the Nordic and Baltic Tour and again last year as well. How did you find getting back playing on that circuit after a break from it?
I have always liked to play international play darts, so I just wanted to try the PDC Nordic and Baltic, how it will feel again to play against the best people in our region. But I didn't practice anything back then. I just went for tournaments and see what happens.
Well, off the hockey last year, we saw you've signed up with the darts manufacturer Mission. What was it that attracted you to Mission and persuaded you to sign with them?
One big thing was that it was Daryl Fitton, who was my contact person over there. And I have been spoken to him like 20 years, but never in the darts thing like that. But just, he wanted me to sign with them, and I felt like it could make my career even better. So that's why.
And that was around this time last year, just before the World Cup, you signed up with Mission. What darts are you throwing with at the moment? Do you have your own prototypes for Mission? How close are we to seeing them on sale?
Yeah, I'm playing with my prototypes right now. Hopefully they will come in a few months.
We'll keep an eye out for that. And we saw you on the stage a few times last year as well, starting with the Euro Tour. What was it like getting to play on that PDC stage for the first time?
It was a really big thing for me. I wanted to play in front of the crowd for, I don't know, a lot of years. And to get the chance to do it in Germany against Gabriel Clemens was something special.
And then a few months later, it was you and again someone that you've known for a long time, Dennis Nilsson, teaming up for Sweden at the World Cup. Last year we saw the brand new format with it being pairs all the way through. How nerve-wracking was that second group game with Italy where the winner would advance and the loser was going home?
It was really nerve-wracking. But I was more nervous in the first round, actually. But it was a tough game against Italy, and luckily I hit the last double in the end. So.
Yeah, you and Dennis beat the Italians 4-3 to get through to the knockout stage, and again you put in another impressive performance to beat Canada 8-5. You're into that final day on the Sunday. What was it like walking into the venue on that Sunday and still being in the mix for the title?
It was nice. It felt like we didn't have any pressure on us. We just, after the group stage, we just played like we wanted to do, and it told to each other that we have no pressure. It's we know that we can play good together and we can do something special on the board. And,
Yeah, and we saw that in the quarterfinals as well, running the eventual champions Wales close as well, just losing out 8-5. After that weekend, did that give you the belief to try and push on and enter more things like Q School and Challenge Tour, which we've seen you in this year?
I wanted to play the Q School just to get the chance to play the Challenge Tour this year. The Challenge Tour started really well, and then I got a lot of chances to play in the Player Championships as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. What a start it was on the Challenge Tour, winning the title on your first weekend, as you mentioned, getting some call-ups to the Players Championships. What have those experiences been like, being in those Players Championships, and I guess getting a taste of what life is like on the tour?
It has been really good. I went there just for experience and tried to do my best. When I started to notice that I could beat some of the players, or really good players over there. It's just experience, and I'm playing like with no pressure on me because I don't have the tour card, and I'm just there for the experience.
Yeah, you mentioned you've had some good wins, a few scalps already, beating the likes of Dave Chisnall and Joe Cullen. Are there any wins which stick out for you so far, or any moments in games from those events that you're most fond of?
I think the most I'm proud of is the first win, and that was against Dave Chisnall. I think it was 6-2 as well.
And away from the tour, a good start to the season on the Nordic and Baltic Tour. You've had a couple of finals. You're third on that order of merit. The top two qualify for Ali Pali. We've still got 2 weekends of events to go. How much of a goal is that for you to get to the World Championship this year?
My goal before the season was top 5, to be honest. And now that I have a good chance for the World Championship as well, of course I'm going for it, but it's really difficult because the top 2 have won a few tournaments, so they are a little bit in front. But still, I'm just doing my best and see what happens.
Well, we've got a couple of questions from our listeners before we let you go. The first one from M. Corser. He wants to ask you about that Challenge Tour title that you won this year. What was it like winning that event?
It was really something special. It meant a lot to do it in the first weekend, because I know that if I doing well on that weekend, I can play a lot of the championships as well. And to win a Challenge Tour with all the good players in the room it's almost like winning a biggest tournament in VDF or something. It's really difficult.
And the last one comes from John Thompson, who says, seems like Swedish darts is in a really good place right now, but what players do you see making an impression maybe 2 or 3 years down the line that we don't really know about at the moment?
Yeah, we have a few players that, of course, Andreas Dirty Harrison is doing well on the modus all the time. But then the youngsters with Anton Östlund and Victor Tingström is doing something special as well. So hopefully they will do something.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out for them. Well, Oskar, it's great to get you on the show. Thanks for giving us some of your time, and we wish you and Jeffrey all the best at the World Cup of Darts next week.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Oskar for joining us now. Continuing our look back at the weekend. We've done the Euro Tour. Let's get on to the Development Tour, and a first title for Beau Greaves, the first Development Tour title won by a female player on Friday. What is next for her to achieve in this game?
Well, it's amazing, really, that Beau has achieved this. I mean, a pretty good return on the women's series last week, which you discussed with Andrew in last week's episode. A victory and a runners-up finish, but not winning all of them as she has done in the past. This is only the second Development Tour weekend that she's done, and she's already up to 8th. I see on the Development Tour order of merit. We'll talk a bit more about the development in a second, but that should, in theory, if the criteria stays the same, that should get her a UK Open debut, which often gets overlooked in these things. That's the top, let's work this out, top 8 that don't have a tour card in that development tour order of merit will get the invite. You would think she would accept that because she's obviously accepted invites to the Grand Slam, for example, in the past. So you'd think she would go at that in Minehead in March. So that would be very exciting. That would be an ITV for main stage contest, you would feel. And I think that she'll probably win a game or two, which would be very exciting indeed, because it's been in a few years since we've seen a woman do that at the UK Open. I think that she's going to qualify for the Grand Slam once again, and I think that qualifying out of her group, which she very nearly did do last year, is a distinct possibility. And then, of course, inevitably she'll have the playoff or the deliberation between whether to go to Lakeside or to go to Ali Pali. I think she'll probably go to Lakeside, and who can blame her, really, because she'll start as a heavy favourite, and it'll be very, very difficult to beat her. So I think those are the immediate goals for her, and I suspect that all of us are probably secretly thinking, oh, it would be good to see her win a tour card, wouldn't it? And she's just having a look at the old table here. She's 4th, chasing Nika Springer and Sebastian Białecki. So she's about £1,300 off of that. However, I think deep down, I think we all sort of know that even if she did get into those top 2 qualifying places for a tour card this year, she would probably turn it down, and that's probably the right call at this point. She's still got so many years ahead of her, and just on a financial level, you've just got to make hay while the sun shines. And if you do win a tour card, of course, which I suspect that she will one day, if not this year, then very soon, then I think that she will do very, very well when she gets there, but it is just probably a bit too soon at the moment. What was your take on Beau's performances, Alex?
Yeah, I just want to say I think you're spot on there, particularly with that, what could be in the future for Beau Greaves there. The UK Open is something I didn't actually think about, but it's a great point. She's in a very good position to get one of those spots in the UK Open, and like you, I think that if she did finish in those spots, she would go to Minehead and give that event a go. But it kind of feels like she is dipping her toe in the water when it comes to the development tour, but just when she starts to get some good results, she kind of reins it back in a little bit, because we saw her win that title on the Friday, followed by 3 quarterfinals, and then the Sunday didn't play in that last event. And the 2 weekends that she has played in, she missed the middle one, but she's decided not to play in that Sunday event. And if she had played all 15 events so far, I don't think you'd have been a brave person to say that she might have been in a spot for the tour cards at the moment. But I don't think that's a decision that she wants to have to make at the moment. I think she is happy where she's playing. She's playing a lot of darts. She's playing the development tour, the women's series, the WDF events, the Modus Super Series as well. So there's a lot of darts for Beau to play, a lot of different avenues for her to go down. And I think the main thing, and she's said it many times before, is that she's enjoying her darts, something that we are a big advocate of, and she's doing that. She's going where she wants to go to play her darts. And yeah, still 20 years old, which sounds ridiculous really, because we've been watching her play for a very long time. But when it comes to the ladies game, she has won pretty much everything there is to win. And okay, a development tour title is not a men's title, but the field of players you see for these events, it is predominantly male players. So it is a first title that she's won in the PDC, where it's not a female only tournament. So yeah, it was another big milestone for her in her career. And looking at that title on Friday as well, she averaged 95, nearly 96 for the event. That was across 8 matches. The first 9 averaged 112, nearly 113, and the other 4 title winners at the weekend, their tournament averages 89, 93, 82 and 91. And it might seem a bit unfair to bring those numbers up, because we know with the development tour there is such a wide range of abilities that enter these events. You've got the tour card holders, you've got some of the top young talents in the world, you've got players that are some of them at the very start of playing competitive darts, they might have just turned 16 and want to test their skills. So for players like Beau Greaves that maybe aren't hitting that high level every single game, it can happen, can't it? You can have a bad game and it can wreck the tournament average. But to get a 95 average, I think, across 8 games just shows the quality that she's got. And you said there, 8th on the Order of Merit, £1,300 off of Sebastian Białecki for that last tour card spot. That is despite missing 7 of the 15 events, almost half of them. So what is next for her to achieve? I like those suggestions there with the UK Open, the Grand Slam. I'm probably looking a little bit further down the line here, but I think following in the footsteps of the likes of Lisa Ashton and Fallon Sherrick, there are 2 big milestones there that I could see her ticking off. Fallon, she was the first female player to win a match at Ali Pali. If Beau decides to go to Ali Pali instead of Lakeside in December, we don't know what her plans are at the moment, but could she join Fallon on that list and win a match at Ali Pali? I certainly think so. And to join Lisa Ashton and being the next female player to have a PDC Tour card, maybe it is too soon for her right now. Only Beau will be able to answer that one. But I think from the outside looking in, she wouldn't be the first female player to achieve those 2 things, winning at Ali Pali, having a tour card, but she does seem like the most likely player to achieve those things next. And whether she does it this year, next year, or a few years further down the line, I think winning that title at the weekend just shows again that she has got the game, she has got the potential to do those things.
I just want to quickly mention the development tour while we're talking about it, because if you notice the top 4 being led at the moment by Keane Barry, then it's Russell Nijman, Van Veen and Rafferty. What do all 4 have in common? They're all tour card holders. Now, there's always this conversation every time we talk about the development tour every year is, should tour card holders be on the development tour? Well, obviously there's that ruling that says that if you're in the top 32, you can't play on it. I think that's fair. I also think it's fair that that tour card holders ranked outside that are eligible for the development tour should be allowed to play on it. It's not a popular opinion necessarily, but I remember in about 2018 interviewing Luke Humphreys even at the Basingstoke Academy for this podcast, asking him that very question, saying, you've got all these people on social media, Luke, saying you shouldn't be in this and you're winning them all. And he said, well, he basically said, it's taught me how to win again, because at that time he was struggling on the senior tour and he went back to the development tour, learned how to win, and it built his game up. And look where he is now. I'm sure it's played in the long term a very important part of his game. So no, full credit to them.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And yeah, great to think back to those chats that we've had with Luke Humphreys from the more modest settings of the Basingstoke Open to now winning world titles and becoming world number 1. And just a point actually on that top 32 ruling, we've seen that come into effect this weekend, haven't we? Because Gian Van Veen, he was playing on the Euro Tour, but his results that he got to the quarterfinals. He's now in the top 32. He's replaced Ricardo Pietrexco, which means that as of right now, Gian Van Veen can no longer play on the development tour. And you might think, well, he's got a tour card, he's pretty set, he's going to be in the World Championship, but there is that added race that the player that finishes top of the development tour also gets a spot at the Grand Slam, which at the moment Gian is not confirmed for yet. So Keane Barry, Wessel Nyman, they both won titles at the weekend. They've both gone above him. It looks like a straight shootout between those 2 now to see who can. I think that would be a debut for either of them. So yeah, a big opportunity now for both of those, with Gian being out of the picture. Very,
very good shout. We love this time of year because of the races to the bigger events later on in the year, don't we? Great. Okay, well, of course, we're recording this just a few days away from the World Cup. And the change in the format last year, of course, went down really well. I think basically everyone agrees that the PDC has done a great job in terms of making it pairs all the way through. What are you expecting this time round, Alex? And are we looking at one of the 4 seeds as the champions, or a surprise unseeded nation to take the title?
I've got to say, I'm really looking forward to this weekend. It's no secret the World Cup is one of my favourite tournaments that the PDC put on. And no, that's not just because my all-time favourite player, the GOAT Coach Dompe, won the first World Cup, but it does help, of course. But no, I love the unique format that the dynamic this event brings to the table. You've got the team element, which is something we don't see in the PDC anywhere else, and the playing for your country side of it as well. We see in other codes there's multiple opportunities during the year to represent your country. In the PDC, this is the only time, and the pairs as well. Yeah, I think that was a very popular move. Probably one of the most popular press releases we've seen from the PDC in recent times was the one when they announced the changes to the World Cup going to all pairs last year. And I think the changes last year brought the World Cup to life for me. Belgium, they were a big part of it. We've got to say, Dimitri van der Bergen and Kim Huybrechts, they were on non-speaking terms. They were giving each other the silent treatment at the start of the World Cup last year. They agreed to put their differences aside for the rest of the tournament, and wow, they served up some entertainment that weekend. The last leg thrillers with the Netherlands and Australia, and then you had the another one as well against Wales. And with these longer formats now that we've got with the knockout stages, you do run the risk of there being some one-sided games. We did see a few of them. The final between Scotland and Wales, Scotland against France, I think that was the quarterfinals. They're both very one-sided games, which aren't the most entertaining to watch. So hopefully we are going to see more of those close games in the knockouts this time round. And as for contenders for the title, we're going to come on to our picks a bit later, but it's no surprise really that England, Netherlands and Wales, they are leading the outrights. I think they are the three main contenders for this World Cup, but I think they've all got question marks around them, which I'll come back to later. But I'll just mention beyond the season, you've also got Scotland, the other seeded nation in there, if you didn't know. So they all get the bye through the group stages. They come into the tournament on Saturday in the last 16. But looking at the teams that are going to be starting on that Thursday or the Friday in the group stages, I've got to say there's two teams I like the look of. One of them is Germany. You've got Martin Schindler and Gabriel Clemens. I just think they work so well together as a team. And you mentioned earlier about the crowds on the Euro Tour in Germany. I don't know if Germany are going to be playing whilst the football team are going to be playing whilst the darts team are playing, but maybe that could play a part as well. And the other one, Northern Ireland, you've got Josh Rock, who's new to the World Cup this year, with Brendan Dolan. They've both won titles on the Pro Tour this season. They've got that winning feeling behind them. So if I had to plump for a non-seeded nation, you're going to find out my prediction in a moment. But if I'm looking at the non-seeds, then my tip's going to be Germany or Northern Ireland for me.
I think what you'll also see this year is, because it's the second year that it's this format has come into existence, you're going to see a better standard because a lot of those players that played last year are returning. So I think that they're going to be much more comfortable playing in that environment and much more used to what's going to be expected of them. Obviously, you spoke to Bahrain last week, and I think you will see a much stronger showing from them. And it was pretty good last year, in fairness, but I think they'll be much better off this year, for example. And I don't think that the novelty has worn off yet, which I think is great. I think this format, we want all darts fans basically want it to stay, really, and it's lovely that that all the nations get 2 games, so it isn't just a one and done job. A lot of them are travelling from a long way to get there, and you're guaranteed at least $2,000 each, which is just lovely to be speaking about, really. I think if I had to pick out, obviously you could make a case for a lot of the smaller nations. I would say Latvia probably would be one that perhaps people aren't talking about much. They didn't fare too badly last year. I think it's possibly a stronger pairing this time around. And of course, if Burton was here, he'd be doing a US of A chant, wouldn't he? So I'm going to try and follow in those footsteps and just mention Hong Kong, because that's half my heritage, of course, and Chukne Hawan to Hong Kong. That's me murdering Cantonese, unfortunately. But yes, it's a very exciting tournament, and one we can't wait to start.
And we're going to get to our predictions in a moment, but before we do, let's bring in our final guest on this week's show. He's going to be making his debut in the World Cup this week. It's the first time we've seen Chinese Taipei in the World Cup, and here's our chat with one half of that team. Here's our chat with An-Sheng Lu. I'm pleased to say we're joined by one half of Team Chinese Taipei at the PDC World Cup of Darts, An-Sheng Lu. Thanks for the time, Lu. How are you doing?
Really well. Thanks for your asking.
Excellent. Well, we're talking 1 week before you play in the PDC World Cup, a debut for Chinese Taipei in the tournament. How are you feeling?
I'm a bit nervous, but more excited about play with a lot of PDC player and close observation like how to play darts. So I'm very excited.
And it's you and Pupo Teng Lee. You were one of 3 teams to win a spot in the World Cup at the Asian qualifiers last month. What have the last few weeks been like preparing for the World Cup?
Practice more at home and to maintain a better condition to prepare for the World Cup.
Well, we'll come back to the World Cup later, but let's go back to the start for you in darts. How did you first discover the game and how old were you at the time?
My first time play darts with my college classmate because we went to play bowling. But I don't like play bowling. I saw a soft tip dart machine at the corner when I was 20 years old.
And did you love darts straight away after you found that dart machine? Where did it go from there? Were you playing a lot with friends or in tournaments in Taiwan?
When my first time play darts, I'm very lucky to check out double 16. It made me feel exciting. After that, I found a club to join to practice. And at the beginning, I play with friends more than tournaments. But later on, I start to join lots of Taiwan's tournaments, but more is soft tip.
Yeah, we know soft tip darts. It's very big in Asia. You play soft tip and steel tip. Is it easy to switch between the two, or does it take some time to adjust if you've been playing a lot of soft tip to then go to steel tip?
Oh no, I think it's not easy to switch between soft and steel tips. It must take some time to adapt.
So what is the dart scene like where you are in Taiwan? Is it mostly soft tip or steel tip, or is it a mixture of both?
There is still important for improvement in both soft tip and steel tip darts in Taiwan. Soft tip darts more than steel tips in Taiwan because in Asia, soft tip just popular more than steel tip.
Well, let's get on to this year, and we've seen you play on the PDC Asian Tour for the first time. What persuaded you to play on that tour this year?
After first time to contact steel tip, let me know I prefer steel tip more than soft tip, so I beginning join the PDC Asian Tour.
And you've had 2 quarterfinals so far on the Asian Tour. How have you found it so far playing on the Asian Tour and against the best Asian players in steel tip?
It's very exciting. The strongest dart player in all of Asia are here, so I can get some experience and to grow up my steel tip.
And last month we had the Asian qualifiers for the World Cup. How did the process work getting to play in that qualifier? Could you choose a partner, or was it down to the rankings? How did it work?
No, I can choose partner because it's done on ranking. In Taiwan, first and second place will form a team, so I can choose.
And going into that qualifier, how did you and Pupo Teng Lee, your partner, feel about your chances? Were you confident you could get one of those 3 spots in the World Cup?
We cherish a real opportunity. In terms of confidence, it's about 50-50.
And in the last round of qualifying, you come back from 3-0 and 4-2 down to beat Malaysia and qualify. What was that moment like when the winning double goes in and you've qualified?
The score is our emotions are quite intense because before this match, Taiwan never get qualified to the PDC World Cup, so we both of us very excited.
And I know you play in a lot of soft tip tournaments, big tournaments in Asia, but next week in the World Cup, where does that rank in the tournaments you've played in so far? Is it at the top?
Of course, it's the biggest stage up to now for me.
And the draw was made yesterday when we're talking, and you're going to play Ireland and Lithuania in the group stage of the World Cup. What was your reaction to the draw?
I don't have much of a reaction because we will give our all. No matter which countries are men we draw.
And I wanted to ask you about your partner next week, Lee. I believe he's 20 years older than you. He's also making his debut, but are you going to be asking him for advice as he is the more experienced player in the team?
Yeah, Pupo Tenle is indeed a more experienced player in Asia. I used to get some advice from him a lot.
And you and Lee are making history, as we've said, the first team from Chinese Taipei to play in the World Cup. What does it mean to represent your country in this tournament?
In my opinion, our small step will be a big leap for Taiwanese players to get more higher PDC Asian Tour ranking in the coming years. By the way, Taiwan also has many outstanding players, I think.
And a word for your sponsors too. I know Condor is one of your sponsors. You like to use the all-in-one flight and shaft system. How much help have they been in your darts career so far?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very thanks for Condor give me this opportunity to be their player, and it's because of Condor I have this interview chance. For life, for darts, Condor give me a lot of help. Not only for fly and all-in-one fly and shaft. Yeah.
And lastly, after the World Cup, what are your main goals and targets for the rest of 2024 and beyond in darts?
I will continue refine my skill tip, achieving a better ranking in the Asian Tour, get more experience, hope to participate in the World Championship one day.
Well, fingers crossed that's a goal you can achieve. Lewis, great to get you on the show. Thanks for giving us some of your time, and we wish you and your partner Lee all the best for Chinese Taipei at the World Cup of Darts.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Alex, for give this chance interviews for us.
Thanks again to Lou for joining us, and we're going to finish up the show. We've got a debate in a moment actually, but before we do, let's get to our question of the week. We're sticking with the World Cup, and it is sponsored by Condor Darts. Our question of the week: prediction time. Who is going to win the 2024 World Cup of Darts? Who are you going with?
Oh, it's a really boring answer, Alex, isn't it? But it is hard to look past England, isn't it? I mean, I think that Luke Humphries is really looking forward to this, and he can't wait. And I think that what we did see, I mean, in fairness to, if we're looking at form, I mean, Luke Humphries did not play to the best of what he can do in Leverkusen, did he? But Michael Smith certainly started to come into his own. So I think that's very promising. And as a result, as a duo, it really is hard to look past those two, I would say. I think there are question marks on the other three seeds. Certainly, I'm sure you're going to expand on these shortly, but we haven't seen Johnny Clayton for a few events since he had that fantastic run in the previous Euro Tour. In the Netherlands, both Noppert and Van Gogh didn't perform to the best that they could do in Leverkusen, for example. And I just don't think there's enough firepower in that chasing pack to really cause England make a run for the title. So yeah, it's a dull answer. I really wish I come up with something a bit more creative, but it is hard to look past them, isn't it? What do you think?
Well, I was going to go with England as well. I'm now thinking maybe I've got to change my mind now. But no, lots of you getting involved in our poll on Twitter as well. Still time to go and vote and have your say, so please do. And at the time of recording, 45%, they're being boring as well. They're going with England. 33% are going with other. 16% with Wales. 6% going with the Netherlands. And I'll read some of our listeners' predictions as well. Lewis Main saying Northern Ireland. George Dobson going with Singapore. Callum saying Wales is the safe option. Who knows how Smith and Humphries will play together. Ben Hudd saying Germany. Warren Allsworth, Germany beat Scotland in the final. So we've got a nice mix of predictions there from our listeners anyway. But it's a tough to predict, I think, because, like I said, there are question marks around the three favourites, England, Wales and the Netherlands. England on paper, yeah, you've got the world number one, the world number three, Humphries and Michael Smith. How can that pairing be stopped? But we've seen it before. We've seen shocks in the tournament We've seen Scotland, Wright and Anderson going into a World Cup as the number 1 seed, losing to the Limbs, Singapore in the first round. We've seen the first year the dream team, if you like, Raymond van Barneveld and Michael van Gerwen were together, losing to Finland. And probably the most famous upset we've seen in the World Cup, going back to the first year, James Wade and Phil Taylor, who were the world number 1 and 2, so slightly better in terms of rankings than this England team this year. And they lost their first game to Spain. So upsets do happen, but the more I look at it, the more I am favouring England here as well. And you mentioned about the football earlier. I've given up on football coming home after watching that England-Denmark game last week. And I don't know about you, Matthew. We are recording on a Monday night. I would have happily recorded this week's show on a Tuesday night and missed the next England game. But I'm probably going to go for a swim on Tuesday night instead. That's how low my interest is in the Euros right now. But with the darts, I do have faith that England can bring darts home. There's the discussion about whether it's better to be a seed and have that bye to the second round, or is it better to start in the first round and have those 2 games to bed into the tournament. But I think the changing format now, that one long game of pairs, it gives those seeds a little bit of time to settle into it. And I think Smith and Humphreys, they are going to click. They are going to go all the way for England. But who do they beat in the final? It's tough because we don't have that draw bracket beyond the group stage. We know it definitely could be Wales or the Netherlands based on how the seedings work. The rest is guesswork right now. So I'm going to guess and say they beat Germany in the final. And if the draw doesn't work out that way, then I'll go with one of the seeds. I'll say they beat Wales in the final instead. And lastly, on the World Cup, we are debuting a new segment on this week's show. We're doing the Weekly Dartscast Parlay, and usually it would be myself and Burton and Quiff each making a prediction, and we'll put them together for an accumulator, see if we can bring you a winner at home. And there's going to be pride on the line as well, because we're going to see who really is the best tipster on the show. Is it me? Is it Burton? Could it be our friends at Quiff? We're going to find out over the next few months. A lot of big tournaments coming up, and ahead of all of them, we are going to be making our predictions for this. And as we know, Burton isn't here this week. I think it was good timing from him to miss the first one. So, Matthew, you are going to be stepping into the hot seat representing Team Hang Tight this week. And the predictions we're going to go for, we're going to look at the fixtures for Thursday's opening night of the World Cup. And I'm going to be kind. I'm going to let you pick. You've got a blank canvas there, 2 winners from that list of 12 games to choose from. And then I'll make my picks. And then we're going to bring in Jack from Quiffer a little bit later on to get his picks and see if we can bring you guys a winner.
Okay. So I was boring earlier in my response. So let's go for 2 potential upsets. Okay. And I'm going to try and justify this. Okay. So I mentioned them earlier before, Latvia. Now I'm going to go for Latvia to beat France. And this is because I think that, Madars Rasmus is playing very well, again, under the radar. And I think he absolutely loves this event. And he's got a new partner, Maldiras, this year. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Who's had a fairly decent-ish run on the Nordic and Baltic tour, and has been very competitive on that tour. He's in the top 10 of the averages on that particular tour. So I think as a duo, and obviously he'll want to be making make a name for himself in that in this event because it's his debut. I think that they might just sneak a result against France, Dragoli and Laber. I'm also going to go for, this is very bold, so New Zealand to beat the hosts, Germany, because I don't know where this news sort of went under the radar this week, but there is a new WDF number 1 is Ben Robb, and Ben Robb is playing for New Zealand, so that would be exciting in that respect to have the WDF number 1 in the World Cup. So that would be really great to see. And I think that him and Puya, that's a fantastic. Him and Hope, that is a great duo, a really formidable duo. And could the pressure get to Germany? Obviously the expectations are so high. You're playing in front of a home crowd. It could do. And obviously Gabriel Clemens is up and down at the moment. So there are 2 quite audacious predictions, which could backfire quite spectacularly, but you never know. How about yourself, Alex?
Well, I'm glad you're making the picks for Burton and not me, but no, great to get your picks there and very, very bold. Looking forward to seeing how they get on. My picks, I'll play it a little bit safer, I guess. I'm going to go with the first game of the tournament. The order of play has just been released before we started recording. You've got Sweden against Spain, and you heard from one of our guests on the show earlier, Oskar Lukasiak, who I thought had a brilliant debut in the World Cup last year. He was in our poll of question of the week after the tournament, who is the World Cup MVP. He was one of the contenders for that. I thought he had a very good World Cup, helping him and Dennis Nilsson, his partner last year, get to the quarterfinals and took 5 legs off Wales in the quarterfinals, losing 8-5. So they pushed them fairly close as well. But Oskar, he's with Jeffrey de Graaf this year. He's back on the tour. Jeffrey, he's born in the Netherlands, moved to Sweden. He's now got that Sweden nationality. That's why he's representing Sweden, of course. And I think they are going to be too strong for the Spain team of Jesus Nogueira and Jose Justicia in that first game. So my first one, I'm going to go with Sweden. Second game, I mean, I'm looking down the list here. I was considering doing back in the 2 guests that we've had, Sweden and Chinese Taipei, but Chinese Taipei not playing until Friday afternoon. So I'm looking elsewhere, and I'm going to play it safe again. I'm going to go with Poland to beat Norway. Last year, we saw that ridiculous average from, I think it was Krzysztof Ratajski and Krzysztof Kachuk, if I'm not mistaken, during the group stages. Ratajski got a different partner this year. Radek Sagansky, who won a Pro Tour title last year, lost his tour card but ended up winning it back at Q School. So I think they're going to be a pretty strong lineup as well. So my 2 picks, I'm going with Sweden and Poland. And before we get to our final topic on this week's show, let's bring in our good friend Jack from Quiff. We're going to hear the latest odds ahead of the World Cup. We're going to hear his 2 picks for the parlay, and then we'll get that all-important price to see how much we could potentially win if all of our picks are right.
I'm pleased to say we're now joined by the head of sponsorship at Quiff, Jack Milner. Thanks for joining us, Jack. How's it going?
Pleasure, lads. Like I said, a long-standing fan and I don't know, fan first and foremost, and being fortunate to be involved in a myriad of different sponsorship opportunities, whether it be Blackpool or the Premier League, or I had to spend a dreaded week at the City West going back a few years ago for the Grand Prix. That was torturous. It's nice to see darts almost getting the deserved recognition now. You'd argue the littler effect is now in full swing, especially when the PDC comes to negotiating for new deals. But great to see Bet Victress once again sponsoring the World Cup of Darts, and it should be a good few days out in Frankfurt.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the World Cup, and we recorded the rest of the show with Matthew on Monday evening. We're recording this on a Wednesday evening, so we should mention the big news that broke earlier today. Gerwyn Price, one half of the defending champions Wales in the World Cup, withdrawing from the event due to health issues. How has that affected the outrights as we edge closer to the World Cup starting?
I mean, without any disrespect to Jim Williams, he isn't Gerwyn Price. I guess he's probably got the pedigree, the experience and the know-how that would see him being a lot shorter price than they would have. Wales were originally the third favourite was 5.85, touch under 5-1 with us. With Quiff, you get a lesser price, and because there's a good chance you get supercharged, you get a much bigger one. But England were the pre-event favourites around 2s on 1.46. They've shortened a little bit, 1.43. Netherlands are the big movers. They're into 3.85. A shade under 3-1. Michael van Gerwen and Danny Nopper. I think it's a little bit of an insult that Jim Williams is no mug. I know the defending champions, Johnny Clayton, a bit inconsistent the last 12 months, so he has been since the turn of the decade. But Wales 9.2. If you fancied them beforehand, I wouldn't really put you off. Them at a bigger price, notwithstanding Gizzy's defection of the weekend. But Wales 9.2. Scotland have remained shared under 15.5, and Northern Ireland 20-1. But it's pretty much the big guns: England, Holland, Wales, Germany, Scotland, and it's pretty much naming what you like the rest.
And we're also doing a feature on the show this week, the Weekly Dartscast Parlay. Usually it will be myself and my co-host Burton DeWitt and you, Jack. We're going to be making our predictions, seeing who is the top tipster on the show. Burton, he's away this week, so we've got in our guest co-host Matthew to make some picks, and we've decided we're going to go with Thursday's opening session of the World Cup. We're both picking 2 winners from the 12 games. Matthew, he's gone with Latvia and New Zealand. I've gone with Sweden and Poland. Jack, let us know who your 2 picks and what odds that looks like for us.
I mean, I'm very boring. I think I went with a couple of shorties. I fancied the Aussies. Damon Head did very well. Got pipped by Dave Chisnall, our Cliff ambassador in the weekend in Leverkusen. The Aussies should be the Japanese. You've gone with Austria. The interesting one of all this, I think, the Aka pace 16 one, we'll post it up later, but picking New Zealand, I thought was an interesting one at the prices. I mean, that'll be the bet that kind of makes that. If you take them out, he only goes down to about 3-1. But yeah, we'll stick the two shorties in. So yeah, 16 to 1 Aka, but it very much hinges on the performance of the Kiwis. And yeah, I think it's a brave one, but you know, he who dares wins, Rodney.
That's absolutely right. So we've got the outrights, we've got our weekly Dartscast parlay. It will be out on our socials and Quiff socials as well. But before we let you go, Jack, anything else our listeners should have a look at if they fancy a flutter for the World Cup?
I'd say just keep an eye on all week. There'll be betting and running available again. The quiz markets are based around supercharge, so you could bank something at 16 to 1. It gets basically boosted to 60s. It could be boosted to 600s, but you take a lesser price in order to get potentially boosted to a lot bigger. But yeah, I said just keep an eye out. Like for me personally, I've got a personal vested interest in the sport due to my me and a few mates. I've always been a huge Gary Anderson fan. Me and a few mates drove down to the O2 when he won the Premier League. It was like 2011. Drove there and back again in a night all the way from Huddersfield, because we're all big fans and all backed him as well, which was helpful. I think Taylor got beat by Barney in the first semi-final, which made it a bit of an easier task. But again, through my history with the World Match Play in Blackpool, which I'm really looking forward to this year, I know Dave Chisnall is as well, and that coupled with, again, I handed over the Premier League trophy to Michael van Gerwen, which was a bit nerve-wracking back in 2019. But yeah, I think it's good to see darts getting exposure, and I'm hoping to help with that through Quiff. We're sponsoring the Lakeside Darts, we're sponsoring Dave Chisnall. There'll be a few more things to unveil later on the next 12 months, and likewise, very delighted to be associated with your wonderful podcast. So first of all, thanks for having us, and yeah, so say all of us for it to be continued into 2025.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys on board. And for our listeners, if you are having a flutter, we should remind you it is 18 plus, T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly, begambleaware.org, and good luck to anyone who's having a bet on the darts this week at the World Cup. And Jack, great to get you on, and I'm sure we'll have you back on ahead of the World Match Play to look ahead to that one as well.
Absolutely, and thank you for keeping the compliance police happy with that. T's and C's apply, 18 plus, but please gamble responsibly on betchers. But yeah, looking forward to a cracking weekend of ours out in Germany.
Thanks to Jack for joining us, and we're going to finish up the show. Matthew, we were bringing you in as a guest co-host this week, and you said you wanted to have a discussion about something a little bit different on the show this week. We did see a recent report by the Times about alcohol in darts, not something that we've spoke too much about on the show before. And yeah, the report that came out just a few weeks ago with the headline, "Most are petrified of playing sober inside darts' drinking culture," and the one of the taglines, the PDC insists sports' dysfunctional relationship with alcohol is in the past, but insiders say most players still turn to the bottle to suppress performance anxiety. And this article, which is online, they're saying that beneath the glossy veneer, concerns have been raised about the portrayal of a now predominantly sober sport, while alarming alcohol consumption allegedly occurs behind the scenes. So Matthew, the floor is yours.
Yes, well, what's amazing about this is that when this article was published, I thought, well, this will be interesting to see what the reaction is and how the PDC actually react to it. And the PDC basically declined to comment, which I think is an interesting defence, and it will do for the moment. And of course, as I always say with situations like this, the PDC are Teflon. It doesn't really matter what criticisms you throw at the PDC, the juggernaut still continues. And there are some very valid points in this story, but I don't think it had quite the impact that the journalist was hoping for, or certainly the Sunday Times was hoping for, because it was behind a paywall. And so I think that from that perspective, that's why we didn't see it perhaps getting the cut through or doing the quote unquote damage that it was hoping to raise. In the article itself, it revolves around two big revelations with the use of a whistleblower. who we are probably led to presume is a player, but it may well be a manager, and they go under an anonymous sort of. They're not quoted as who they are, which is understandable. And it's great fun to try and guess who they are, of course. The first revelation, of course, is that there are now increased fines for the number of for players who bring in alcohol into floor events in things like fruit shoot bottles and opaque bottles, for example. And they're now going to be fined £250, and that goes up in increments in terms of the number of offences. That is a totally bonkers thing, by the way, and you can know if you explain that to anyone that follows sport but doesn't follow darts, that is a totally insane concept, and one that often causes sort of a wry smile. The other revelation is in relation to a player who, again, is unnamed, who had a disproportionately poor performance in their second game because, in comparison to their first game, because of the long wait, and they overdone it on the alcohol, and they had to be put in the recovery position after their game. And this whistleblower actually goes on to say, is it right that the PDC are creating an environment where players can drink up to 10 pints and be completely, essentially paraphrasing here, but completely annihilated before a match? So those are all the allegations that are put forward, and again the PDC declined to comment, and as did the manager of the player, who again is unnamed, who collapsed. So those are all the key points before we delve into this. What it does do, of course, is use the Matt Porter quote, which he gave to Darts News, and this was in response to what Dennis Priestley said, who basically essentially said that he couldn't get onto the stage and play unless he'd had I think it was 10 pints as well, actually, what he was saying from memory. And Matt Porter says, in the darts world today, you won't find any top players who benefit from alcohol. Other players who used to play for darts are not significant. Ouch. Alcohol has nothing to do with today's sport, but darts still has to deal with the cliche of a pub sport with big bellies throw at a board. So what's your, before I give my thoughts, what's your take, Alex?
Well, yeah, it's not, as I say, it's not something that we've discussed on the show, I don't think, in our 7 years of doing this podcast. And it's kind of a taboo subject, if you want to use that word, when it comes to darts these days. We know it goes on. We know players, not all of them, but players at whatever level it is, they consume alcohol before games. And it kind of gets brushed under the carpet, really, doesn't it? And we couldn't get a player on as a guest and ask them during the interview, maybe halfway through, do you drink before a match? How many pints do you have before you go up on stage? The interview would end pretty quickly, and you'd find that our rate of getting guests on the show every week, it would go down quite sharpish as well. And yeah, you mentioned that Times article being behind a paywall as well, so not many people have had the chance to read it, but as you say, they claim to have had an insider tell them all the information that they've put in the article. And one thing I'd like to see, and I don't know how feasible it is, but on that subject of anonymity, really, is to do some sort of anonymous survey where you ask a pool of players from various levels, top pros, those lower down the rankings, players on the tour, players off the tour, players that are still playing professionally. Look, just lots of questions, really, and they can all answer them honestly and with that anonymity still there, so there's going to be no fear of being reprimanded or getting in trouble. And I think that would shed some light on the game and how prevalent alcohol is in darts. Would the PDC want to see that? Probably not. They want to portray a professional sport, and for good reason too, because the more professional they can make the game, both on the inside but more importantly on the outside, the bigger it's going to get, the more prize money, the more lucrative sponsors you can bring in. So it makes perfect business sense, but will that dynamic with alcohol in darts change? I think if you've got a vision of getting to a point where all the players on tour are sober, the players' room is alcohol free, I think that's a long way off. But many players grew up with darts in the pubs, myself included. It's a social game for me, but look at what it's grown into become now. And darts, yeah, it's been played in pubs for a long, long time. And whilst you can give out an image or play down that aspect of it at the professional level, it is going to take something drastic, really, to see it completely removed at the top. You could say the next Pro Tour event, everyone's got to take a breathalyzer and be alcohol free. Yeah, I can't see it happening.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Alex. Yeah, that's a very good shout. I think what the PDC are most concerned about is that watershed moment that there clearly was in the 80s, which was not the 9 o'clock news sketch when 15 million people watched Smith and Jones do and we've all seen it, and it's very prevalent still, and it's still hilarious, and people still talk to me about it who know absolutely nothing about darts, and that's and here's Dave Fatbelly playing Dave even fatter belly, and you require 140 milliliters. Sorry, you've scored 140 milliliters. You require two double volgas. It's still funny, but it was so powerful. That was the sort of the viral content of that period, which caused the downfall of the video, or certainly a big contributing factor. And that's when all the sponsors pulled out, broadcasters pulled out. So what is going on with this? Why are we putting this on our screens? What a terrible sport. That's what the PDC are most worried about. I don't think they should be very worried in that regard, because it's such a massive juggernaut now. I don't think that moment is coming, and you only have to look at the fact that if you look very closely at the European Tour over the weekend in Leverkusen, when it was the side-on camera angle, in the background is a beer bottle, and I'm going to absolutely butcher this name now, but it was Bitburger, and that is a drink. So there's still that connection. I think alcohol is in relation to darts is legal doping. I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily, as long as you're doing it responsibly. I guess the question is that a lot of the players, of course, are not doing it responsibly, and the whistleblower in the anonymous whistleblower in the article is saying, well, vast majority, 125 of them do drink. There's only about 3 that don't. And 70% are functioning alcoholics, which I think is very harsh, but we don't see it, so you can only take their word for it in that respect. And in terms of alcohol, well, the pure economics of running a darts event at a grassroots level, and presumably the floor events as well, because of course those bars, they are taking money from the players. Well, it just doesn't. The economics doesn't work in relation to darts unless you have a bar and you can sell alcohol. So in my opinion, the PDC should probably you're going to look daft if you keep saying, oh, alcohol's not nothing to do it, no one drinks, or pretend that it doesn't exist. I think that's probably disingenuous. I think you need to be saying, look, players do it responsibly, or you could do what Scott Waits did when he went on to the Stephen Colbert show in America. Just said, yeah, I drink 5 pints before I drink it, which I thought was absolutely amazing, because I was all fair play to you, Scott, for being so honest about it. The PDC are Teflon in relation to this. It's not going to bring them down. It'll be interesting to see if there's any follow-ups. I would love to see a sober darts event at PDC level. Chris Dobie would win that, hands down.
Yeah, I think you're right there. And also, we talk about darts and alcohol obviously behind the scenes, but it's also there in front of you, isn't it? You look at the crowds. If you were to say the next European Tour event that we've got no alcohol, we've run out, or we're not going to serve alcohol to the crowd, I think you would see, well, in any event, if it's a TV event, Ali Pali, any event like that, then I think you're going to see the crowds go down, aren't you? Because they like to go to the darts, like to have a few drinks as well. That is part and parcel of darts these days as well. It's a day out / a night out for a lot of the crowd as well. They like to go and enjoy themselves, watch the darts and have a few drinks at the same time. So I think you've got that going on. But as you can see it, you're watching it on TV as well. But as we know, alcohol in darts, it is something that still goes on these days. I mean, I was chatting with a player only a few weeks ago, and they said, usually I have 4 pints before I even get my darts out of the case. And I said, well, I have 10. I'm joking there. But, we know it goes on. And yeah, I think if the players can be responsible, I think that's, as fans watching, as people that have got an involvement and an interest in darts, I think that's the only thing you can really ask for, really, is to say, be responsible. And hopefully we don't see, like you said, that instance in the Times report. We don't see things like that, because that is the last thing we want to see is that happen. And again, if that did blow up and that did get out to the press, then that's not a very good look for darts at all, is it? So yeah, I think it's something that the PDC have got their eye on, but again, I think it's probably a blind eye really to it at the moment, in just in case something does big does happen, then I think that's when we would see something come out of it. But at the moment, I think it's something that has been in the game for years and years, and there's no sign of it going away anytime soon.
Right, one last point on it. It's going to be really scary when Luke Littler starts drinking.
Well, he's on the J20s. We know that. I've spoke to him before. When he won his tour card on the development tour, he was celebrating with a few J20s. But somehow, and this is probably one of the biggest mistakes we've seen in darts history, we kept tagging in J20. I know a lot of people call it J2O, the drinks company, but they didn't want to get involved and sponsor him. I mean, look at all the publicity you would have got off the back of that. You'd got to the World Final a few months later. You'd have had everyone drinking J20s, and you probably wouldn't have any darts player drinking alcohol now that they'd all be on the J20s. Origin Passion Fruit, that's a particular favourite of mine.
Apple and blackcurrant.
Nice.
Is that, the glitterberry. I had a glitterberry J2 on my first date with my now wife. How about that?
Very nice. I won't ask about the other story you've said on this show before about that. I think that is all the time we've got for this week. We've covered an awful lot on the show. Matthew, great to get you back on. Is there anything else before we go?
I think just hang tight and enjoy the darts, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely spot on. Well, yeah, Matthew, like I said, great to get you back on. Thanks to our guests as well for joining us, to Oskar and Lou for their time. Thank you to our sponsors, to Darts Corner and Condor Darts. Remember, all your darting needs, check them out. Links in the description. Thanks again to Quiff as well for their support. Thanks to Jack for his time earlier. Good luck with the parlay if you're playing along at home. If you're going along with Matthew's picks, my picks and Jack's picks, good luck. And remember, you can supercharge your odds with Quiff, but it is 18 plus. T's and C's apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. Again, links in the description. And if you want to download the Quiff app or head on to their website. And that is all the time we've got. So thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back next week. Burton hopefully will be back from his holiday. We'll have him back as well. But until then, the World Cup is almost here. So it's almost time to enjoy the darts.